Mr. Chairman, you said about 5 or 10 minutes ago, we had cautioned us to be respectful of one another, and I can appreciate that. I think most of us try to abide by the golden rule, treat other people the way we'd want to be treated, and I would just ask you today to think how does this line up with the golden rule? I know that's something that you believe in. I know it's something Senator Grassley believes in, and there are others that are here. I'm not so sure that it's consistent. I want to go back in time. I want to go back in time maybe 2 months. And I spent a fair amount of time in this room 2 months ago on a committee that I'm not even a part of. And it was the Health, Education, Labor, Pensions Committee. And under the leadership of Lamar Alexander and Patty Murray, they, for 2 weeks, held bipartisan hearings in this room. And they brought in governors, bipartisan across the country. They brought in insurance commissioners, bipartisan from across the country. They brought in health economists. They brought in health insurers. They brought in providers for health insurance. What can I do? And the theme that emerged and what they were trying to focus on is how do we stabilize the exchanges, which I think our president is intent on destabilizing. But their focus was how do we stabilize the exchanges to bring down the cost of coverage in the exchanges. Whatever it is. And there was general agreement that there were 3 things, if we would do them, that we would stabilize the exchanges, we'd have more insurers offering insurance in the exchanges, and that competition would bring down prices significantly. Sometimes, some folks have said by as much as 30 to 35%. You're going to do what? They basically gathered, there seemed to be a consensus that 3 things we ought to do in order to stabilize the exchanges. Number 1, restore, make it clear that these CSRs, cost savings reductions, which are really a way to bring down the cost of copays, deductibles for folks who are low income, make sure that that's not going away. Make it clear that that's not going away. Number 2, said we need some kind of reinsurance program. Make it clear that, like much as we've done in Medicare Part D, that we have a backstop there for really expensive cases that might be that the insurance companies might be otherwise stuck with paying. Third thing they said we ought to do is continue to have the individual mandate and not get rid of it. And several of our witnesses said we could reduce the cost of premiums in the exchanges by as much as 35% if we would do those 3 things. What? If we would do those 3 things.
I can't hear you. What?
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just walked us back in time 2 months. I want to walk us back in time to 1993. In 1993, I was a governor. I was brand new governor of my state. And in 1993, a senator named John Chafee introduced legislation that was reported to this committee. And the legislation that he introduced was actually ideas that were brought to him by the Heritage Commission, as I recall. And those ideas were turned into legislation that was co-sponsored by 23 Republican senators. It was an alternative to Hillary Care. An alternative to Hillary Care. And among those 5 ideas that were introduced in that legislation, that 2 of the finest people on this committee, you, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Grassley, co-sponsored, was legislation that said every state should have an exchange. There should be a sliding scale tax credit to bring down the cost of coverage for low-income people. There should be an individual mandate to make sure that the exchange has a healthy mix of people, young and old, healthy and unhealthy. There should be an employer mandate, and there should be a prohibition that said insurers cannot refuse to cover people with a pre-existing condition. That was a Republican alternative to Hillary Care. In the end, Hillary Care didn't go anywhere, and neither did the legislation that 2 of our colleagues co-sponsored. You had a good idea. That bill was a very good idea. And for the life of me, I don't understand why you've been running away from it. This administration and so many of our colleagues have been running away from it for years. I think this president says he attacks it because it's Obamacare. He thinks Obama had something to do with it. He had nothing to do with it. He had nothing to do with it. It was an effort by this committee to find a bipartisan plan or proposal around which to rally to extend coverage to people who otherwise wouldn't have it. I would just say, Mr. Chairman, if the shoe were on the other foot and something like this were introduced, which really is a major change in the bill, and we asked for, or you asked for like another 24 hours to think about it and offer amendments, I think we'd probably say yes. That's the way we would treat you. We would put ourselves in your shoes. And I would just urge you to do that today. Give us 24 hours. Treat us the way we would like, probably, hopefully treat you. And let's just move on. This is not the way to develop bipartisan consensus. In fact, if anything, this just diminishes the trust and confidence with one another and takes us in the wrong direction. I urge us not to go there. I'm going to ask you to think about something for just a minute.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Everybody on this committee, and most of the people in this room and that are watching this, know that in order for the exchanges to be successful, there have to be a good mix in the exchanges of healthy and younger people as well as those who are older and maybe not so healthy. There's more than one way to do this. The individual exchange is one, auto-enrollment might be others. They're different ideas. And one of the great things that the Help Committee did 2 months ago is they had a great lineup of witnesses from across the country, from all different walks of life, smart people, informed people, Democrat and Republican, to come in and say, this is how we think the different ways to stabilize the exchange. I would love for us to have a hearing here, or back in our regular hearing room, 215 Dirksen, that just brought in smart people from around the country and said, in addition to the individual mandates, what are some other good ideas that either by themselves or in combination with other ideas could actually get the mix of young people that we need in the exchanges? That would make a lot of sense to me. As my father would say, just use some common sense. And I think that's common sense.